Today, we are going through all 32 NFL teams, taking a look at the biggest headlines from each of them. Because you know what, guys? Even though it's the preseason, the news matters, and we have to pay attention to everything that's going on here. I know everyone's going to tell you it's just preseason. Don't worry about the players. It really does matter because we get all the telltale signs of what is coming in the NFL season. And so today, Dave, we're going to go through all 32 teams. We're going to do this rapid fire a little bit, try to go a little quicker than we did last time here. But let's start
No
off with the
promises.
first team. Yeah, no promises. First team here. Arizona Cardinals. Wide receiver Marvin Harrison has been working over the middle of the field a little bit more, according to reports, as opposed to being so static and outside in 2024. Ideally, this is a good thing. This is what we want. Is the faith there, though? Because all the reports are still that Trey McBride is the top receiver on this team, and he kind of works over the middle. So where are you at with Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because I think both of us might have him a little bit lower in our rankings than everyone else.
This is promising, though, and you saw it in that first preseason game. Kyler Murray's second pass attempt of the day was just the short little crosser to Marvin Harrison where he kind of slid in between two linebackers, caught the ball, picked up the first down. It's like that's what we want to see these receivers getting. And last year, I don't think the stats told the full story for Marvin Harrison. Sure, overall production was a little bit disappointing, but he looked good. Like he looked good in the things that they were asking him to do. The problem is they were asking him to run these complex routes 15, 20 yards downfield, where he was oftentimes asking for contested catch opportunities. If we can just sprinkle in one, two, maybe three of these layups per game, that's the difference between him being a high-end wide receiver 3 and a high-end wide receiver 2. So love this story, paying close attention to it. I think that this target tree in Arizona is going to be so funneled to Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride that they can both be elite options. We can look at a 25 to 30% target share going to each of them this year.
Yeah, I think the thing that worries me the most about a guy like this is if they're trying to work things over the middle, it is a bit of a struggle for a guy like Kyler Murray who does like to get out of the pocket a lot. Like he is a dancer. He will get out of the pocket. And so I think we're gonna end up having to see a lot of sort of backyard football for both of
Mhm.
these guys. I think that's where Trey McBride thrives. Um I want to see that all work with Marvin Harrison Jr. And it's not like I'm going to be passing on him in drafts, but I'll probably just end up taking him a little bit lower than most other people. Let's go to the next team on here. Atlanta Falcons, wide receiver Drake London, crushing here in the preseason, which, I mean, sure, it's preseason, but everything right now in terms of target share is comparable to exactly how Michael Penix was targeting him last year during the season, where we're looking at a guy that's like around a 38 to 40% target share through practices, through preseason, and through last season with Michael Penix. So Drake London seems to be far and away the top receiver on this team. But I think there's a guy here that we could even look at as being a first round pick in fantasy drafts based on just the projected volume alone, Dave.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I've got him as my 11th player off the board, so I don't think it's crazy at all to take him in round one. One, there's very little target competition. Darnell Mooney dealing with this injury right now. Kyle Pitts, a couple of months ago, I might have been holding on to some hope there, looking at this potential breakout. But man,
They've been
you read
resting him
these,
too.
yeah, and you read these, even when he is healthy, though, he is just like an afterthought in training camp
Mm-hmm.
reports. It's like, Drake London had a great day, and Casey Washington is stepping up, and Ray McLeod's doing his thing. Oh, yeah, and Kyle Pitts got a target too. I mean, like, he definitely seems like an afterthought in this offense right now. And we've talked about it a lot, but Michael Penix's willingness to push the ball to contested receivers is very good for Drake London. He isn't the best separator, but he is so good at attacking at the catch point, pulling down these contested targets. So, yeah, the fact that he's pulling a 38-40% target share, I don't think we could project that for an entire season, but 32, 33, 34%, I don't think that's out of the question at all. Drake London could easily, and I'm not trying to oversell this, could easily be the overall wide receiver 1 when this year is said and done.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there. I think the writing is on the wall here for a guy that even if the Falcons offense is not very good, which I find that hard to believe because of Bijan Robinson and Drake
Right.
London here, it would have to take a monumental just breakdown from Michael Penix for this offense to not be good and for Drake London to not have the volume that he needs. All right, next team on here, Baltimore Ravens. Wide receiver Rashad Bateman has been the top deep threat in camp. I mean, throw your hand up if you've heard this, but he might take another step forward in 2025. So he does have the big breakout here in 2024. I've been a big Rashad Bateman fan, mostly because it sounds like Batman. It has absolutely nothing to do with his play on the field. But I mean, he gets the big contract extension. You have to imagine this team's going to be using him more in the offense, right? Is this a guy where you're you're actually putting some stock into what the fantasy value could be, or are you just kind of saying, well, there's Derrick Henry, there's Zay Flowers, there's Mark Andrews. Do I really want the fourth option on this offense, even if it is a good offense?
I'm going to take such the cop out here and say that I like Rashad Bateman in best ball and am not crazy about drafting him in regular fantasy football leagues because we know the big
Yeah.
play opportunities are there. He could always score a 65-yard touchdown, and that'll play in best ball. But then you've also got the weeks that you put him in your lineup where he doesn't have that big touchdown. And you're like, why did I start a guy who has 2 catches for 22 yards? That's kind of the Rashad Bateman experience. But I do want to say, like, this guy has dealt with a lot of injuries. This is a first round talent. I mean, a guy that they clearly thought was going to be a big part of the offense and dealt with so many injuries early in his career. Missed 5 games as a rookie, missed 12 games in year 2, missed another game in year 3. And then it seems like he is starting to put it together. I don't think he's ever going to live up to being that like 1,300-yard wide receiver. That is just not the guy that he is going to be, but he is a very good receiver. And he got a contract extension last year, had the breakout season, got another multi year contract extension this year. So he's going to be a big part of the offense. The problem is they just don't pass the ball that much. They were 31st in pass attempts last year. Of course, Lamar Jackson is so efficient that's why we can see Derrick Henry and Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell and Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman all finding paths to fantasy relevance because this offense is just so hyper efficient, but it does tend to lead to a lot of highs and lows. So Rashad Bateman, probably a guy that I'm overlooking in managed leagues, but in your deep best ball or in your best ball lineups, I like him. In your deep dynasty lineups where you have to start like 3 wide receivers and 3 flex positions, I think he's worth it there. But I think in most redraft leagues, he's a guy that I'll let my league mates deal with.
Next on here, Buffalo Bills. This is Team Dave. They just got trounced by your Chicago Bears here in a preseason game. If
Their
only,
second team defense got trounced
I was
by
about to
Bears
say, if
first team
only
offense. Yeah.
preseason
Uh-huh.
matters. But
Uh-huh.
yes, but I'm so glad you said it too, because there is the context that we need, right? First team Bears offense goes against second team Bills defense. This should happen. If it didn't happen, I think we'd be concerned the other way around.
Since you opened a can
Um,
of worms, let me just mention
sure.
real quickly too that
Don't say
this
Bears
feels
stuff. We're getting to the Bears.
little fugazi. They got a week of joint practices where Ben Johnson was able to kind of scout the second team, find the weaknesses, and then they
Just
come out
said.
with 2 drives that are scripted. First team offense going against second team defense. I mean, I'd like
There's
to
a
see a
little bit of
full
getting the
game.
confidence. There's a little bit of getting it's
That's
kind
it.
of like when a
It was a
college team,
confidence builder,
yeah,
100%.
it's like back in the day. I remember going to a University of Miami game when they had Willis McGahee as the running back and Ken Dorsey as the
Yep.
quarterback, and this was the
Yep.
team that goes on to play Ohio State in the national championship, I believe. And the first game they play against Florida A&M, and like the whole thing was like, well, Florida A&M's got a good band. Like that's about it. Like that, it's a confidence booster game. You go out there, you beat the
100%.
crap out of some team by 50 points, and that's it. And like that's kind of
Yep.
what this ended up being. So yeah, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the Bears later. But Buffalo Bills here, James Cook and Ty Johnson both sat out of this preseason game, and Ray Davis is the one that ends up getting the extended work. He's in a full-time role in this where they have him third downs, first downs, all over the place. I think this is one of these things that can be interpreted either as good or bad, right? You can either say like, "Oh, good, they're letting him work in a 3-down role," but then you can also look at this and say, "Well, why didn't he get the rest that James Cook and Ty Johnson got?" You know, these guys that are in very obvious roles. Ty Johnson was the third down back last year in Buffalo. I wonder, Dave, is this a good sign or should we be concerned?
My read on this backfield is almost identical to my read on the Cincinnati Bengals backfield. First of all, Ty Johnson, James Cook, they're both trusted veterans. They're on their second years. They're not on their rookie deal. So it makes sense that they get some preferential treatment here. But to me, James Cook is the clear workhorse, just like Chase Brown is going to be the clear workhorse. Ty Johnson comes in on third down, just like Samaje Perine comes in on third down. And I think with Ray Davis and Taj Brooks, since I'm making this comparison here, I think we might see him get sprinkled in for like 3, 4, 5 touches per game, but you're not really going to see any path to fantasy relevance without an injury to the guy ahead of him. So I think that Ray Davis right now getting these touches shows that he is kind of that next up guy. And I think that he is still one of the most valuable handcuffs out there. But without an injury to James Cook, I don't think that there's much usage for Ray Davis.
Next on here, Carolina Panthers. They kind of come back down to earth here. The entire offense plays. I mean, this is what happens. You go up against a good defense, and things look a little different, right? And we do tend to get a little over our skis, especially in preseason. But entire offense plays poorly against the Houston Texans. Starters were allegedly pulled earlier than expected, and speculation can be that it's to protect them from their sloppy play. Bryce Young looked good in practice, but then it didn't translate to the game. Up and down at camp here, reportedly, right? Like we're not sitting there watching every camp practice, but is this one of these things where maybe we're getting a little too excited about the Panthers, or is this kind of just right? Like, I don't think any of us were expecting them to be a top 5, top 10 offense. I think we're looking at them as a middle of the road offense that can surprise people, and they went up against a buzzsaw of a Houston Texans defense that is very, very good.
Yeah, I think it's as simple as that. And you see this all the time where these teams like look really good when they're playing against themselves in training camp, and then they have to get tested against another team in a joint practice or a
Yeah.
preseason game. And it's like, whoa, we're actually way behind schedule. So it's like, wow, Bryce Young has been lighting it up in training camp. That might be a bigger admission on the cornerbacks and some of the other players in Carolina than it is, a pat on the back for Bryce Young. So definitely noteworthy here. And like you said, I don't think anybody was anticipating a top 5 offense for Carolina. They're still very, very suppressed in fantasy ADP. Tedero McMillan is the one guy that you need to pay up for a little bit, but even that, you're getting a guy who is drafted in the top 10, regularly falling into round 4. I think that there's still a lot of meat on the bone with this Carolina Panthers offense in regards to their fantasy value, and still make for guys that I want to target. Tedero McMillan, definitely want him on my team. Xavier Legette is so cheap that he's, basically free in drafts right now. And then Bryce Young, you can get him as like your QB3 if you want, regularly going outside of the top 24. So I don't think there's any expectations for this offense, which makes them a fun budget option to target in your drafts.
Next up on here, Chicago Bears have, I think, the performance of the week in preseason that everyone is talking about. Caleb Williams. I mean, there's been so much made about Caleb Williams, his completion percentage in practice, and it's not up to where we want it to be. And then he goes out into this game and looks fantastic. And I think the big takeaway from this was not just that the Bears offense can look good when scripted and on time in Ben Johnson's scheme, but that everyone got a piece of the pie in this. There was Cole
Hmm.
Kmet Love, Colston Loveland, Luther Burden, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. We got to see Roma Dunze line up in the slot, man. Like there were players all over the place. And honestly, I don't think we're any closer to having clear answers on a target hog in this offense, but I think we are closer to saying they can be a good offense, right, Dave?
There was a name that you didn't mention, or
Oh,
maybe you
come
did.
on.
Olamide Zaccheaus.
Ah,
I gotta say,
all right.
I cover the Bears. I'm the one that does these training camp reports, and I was blown away all week by the amount of Olamide Zaccheaus love that was coming out of these joint practices with Buffalo. And I was kind of thinking, like, this can't be real, right? Like on a team with DJ Moore and Luther Burden and Roma Dunze and Colson Loveland and Cole Kmet and DeAndre Swift, why is Olamide Zaccheaus getting so much love? But they talked about it, and I'm so like I don't want to say it, but he's in the Amon St. Brown role. And I'm not saying that he's the same player as Amon St. Brown, but they're talking about using him in pre-snap motion, that he's the guy that's getting pulled and going through as the lead blocker in the B and C gaps on run plays, that he's the one running these choice routes where he can kind of feel the soft spots and zones. So I don't think, I'm not saying Olamide Zaccheaus is Amon St. Brown 2.0. I'm not saying that he's going to be a top 5 receiver, but very much so the forgotten guy in this offense. And we talked about, DJ Moore could be that guy. Luther Burden could be that guy. It sounds like Zaccheaus has a stranglehold on that role right now. Now, I think best case scenario is that Luther Burden can take over that at some point this season. Luther Burden also looked very good in that preseason game, but Zaccheaus was a guy going undrafted in every single fantasy draft that you were doing over the last month or so. Now he's one of those guys in best ball drafts or in deep leagues that I'm okay spending a 16th, 17th, 18th round pick on, because it sounds like he is going to be a guy that's going to see a lot of targets out of the slot in this offense.
You're gonna make me do it. I don't want to be the Debbie Downer.
Did you see my tweet yesterday at
Yeah,
10:30
I
a.m., like
did. I
hours
know,
before
I
the game, where
did.
I
You're
said,
jazzed up on Olamide Zaccheaus stuff. I know, I get it. And like, I
let
hate to
me
be the
two,
one to
let me
be
let me say
negative.
two other things before you hate on this real quickly. Brad
Okay,
Biggs,
yeah,
a
no, give us
longtime
more
Bears beat writer,
propaganda.
he came out and he said that he has been the most surprising player of camp. They also asked Ben Johnson, they said, who do you trust most in this offense? And he said DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, and Olamide Zaccheaus. So I mean, this is more than just like, a 39-yard touchdown in the preseason. This has been a steady drumbeat that we've been hearing for weeks and weeks now. And it sounds like his veteran savviness, his willingness to find those soft spots and zones, chip in the blocking game and all that stuff has really allowed him to stand out in this group.
I mean, the three guys you just mentioned, they're all veterans, like
Right,
lengthy veterans. Like,
right.
of course, those are going to be the guys that you want to trust in the offense. Like, I look at it this way: sure, is he a last round pick that you can throw, throw your hat in the ring for? Sure, but he's not a guy that I'm gonna like get hyped and say he's going to be the starting slot receiver for the Bears all season long. He's going to be number 2 or 3 or even 4 in targets for the Bears, because that's also not as likely. I mean, we don't go around seeing the 28-year-old breakout wide receiver who has not missed a game for the last like 5 years and
Right.
has still not been a top 50 wide receiver in fantasy. Like, there's so many of these things, and I'm not trying to do this where like I make people feel bad about having hype for a player, but this is also where we'll look at quite literally a bad play where Damar Hamlin misses a tackle, and then some of the beat reporters throughout the week saying he's one of the more trusted veterans on the team. And then we're like, this is the wide receiver 3 for the Bears. Did you see how good Caleb? And like, these things get legs in the wrong way. So I'm not saying that we can't be excited about him. I'm just saying we should temper it a little bit. Is that fair?
I just
Am
want to
I
say my
am I being the
excitement was
am
well
I
before the preseason game, and then I think the preseason game just kind of signaled what I had been reading throughout the week. One other thing I'll point out, Jarvis Landry, we hear all the time, his slot role, 112 targets in his last season playing with Ben Johnson, never eclipsed 85 targets in a game after that. I mean, like he peaked at his age 25 season with Ben Johnson, then it was just all
Mhm.
downhill from there. Like there is something to be said, and Ben Johnson talks about it all the time. How having that slot player, the guy who can work across the middle of the field underneath, how that opens up everything else. So you've got Cole Kmet and Colson Loveland working deep in the seam. You've got Olamide Zaccheaus working underneath, and then you've got DJ Moore and Roma Dunze on the boundaries. It makes sense that Zaccheaus, if he can hold on to this role, is going to see a lot more work than people anticipate.
I swear we cannot do 5 more minutes of Olamide Zaccheaus talk here,
Let's move on
but
to the next one. I just want to say it's something worth
it's
keeping an eye on. This is not just
okay.
a flash in the pan. It's not just one game in the preseason. This has been a steady drumbeat for the last 2 weeks out of camp.
Okay. Um, I'll keep part of one eye on it, but there's just enough guys playing in the slot. Whatever. We're moving on. Cincinnati Bengals. Trey Hendrickson is looking less and less likely to actually get signed by the Bengals, and now there are teams that are looking to make a trade for him. One of the teams rumored is the New England Patriots, who I think that's just a team that's trying to just get better and better around Drake May. Dave, the Bengals, man, like, I know this is not a fantasy relevant player unless you're IDP, but I would say this: we already knew the Bengals defense is really
Yep.
bad, but now like this just really cements that they will likely lead the league in passing attempts again. And Joe Burrow, as long as he is healthy, and T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, as long as they are healthy, should just be an absolutely dominant trio through the air.
And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, this is already the worst defense in football, and now they're losing their best player potentially. Um,
Right.
Wherever you've got Jamar Chase ranked, like the 101 isn't high enough. Like I don't even know how to say it, but like Jamar Chase is going to smash this year. Chase Brown, we talked about him being a great value when he was at the 2-3 turn. Now he's moving up into the middle of round two. Still good value there. When he creeps into the top of round two, I still think he's a good value there. Like I think he should be going at that 1-2 turn in the same conversation as Devon Achane and Derrick Henry. So yeah, this defense is going to be awful, which is going to lead to a lot of shootouts on offense, which we love for fantasy football.
Okay, let's talk about this next team because this is probably the big news of last week. The Cleveland Browns, Quinshawn Judkins, not charged in his domestic assault case, which means he should be signing with the team very soon. Still, I mean, we don't know how long that
Yeah,
could
they
take.
signed
It could
Isaiah
be
Bond before they signed Quinshon Judkins.
very weird, undrafted player,
That's
right?
one way to
But
take the heat off of Deshaun Watson. Sorry, can I not say that here?
they'll be back at
Sorry,
full
Joe.
strength soon, I guess.
Preemptive sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, they're collecting all of the Infinity Stones over there in Cleveland. But if Quinshon Judkins does sign soon with the Browns, there's so much for him to do. He's got to get caught up in camp. He's got to get in shape. We already don't like when rookies miss time in camp. We don't like when running backs are not conditioned to take on carries. This is a player though that has been used to it throughout 4 years of college football, and I don't think we can assume that he wasn't working out while away from the team. Like, I'm sure there was some sort of talk there, especially if they're like, hey, you're not signed yet, but we'd like for you to keep up with XYZ. Granted, we don't know. So I think the assumption here is that he will be the top running back for this team at some point, right? Like they drafted him to be that. Dave, I want to discuss this because there's going to be a lot of questions of, do I draft him? Where do I draft him? Where is he ranked? And I've got Football Guys ADP pulled up right now, and Quinshon Judkins is the running back 39 at pick 116 in ADP. That is him going ahead of guys like Tank Bigsby, Najee Harris, Tajay Spears, Rashad White, Trey Benson. He's going just behind players like Javonte Williams. Not players like, these are actually players. Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet, Ramondre Stevenson. Is that more or less where you see Quinshon Judkins as sort of a round 10 to 12 player that you're looking at in redraft?
I don't know if you're ready for this smoke, Alfredo. I've got him
Oh boy.
way higher than that. I've got him going
In
in round
Olamide
6.
Zaccheaus territory?
Much higher than Olamide Zaccheaus too. I've got I think he should be going in like the end of round 6, early round 7. I've got him as my QB 28 in rankings right now.
Well, he's a running back, so that's weird.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Not enough coffee yet?
Yeah, I guess not. But yeah, I think, you look at this is an early round 2 rookie on a team that is desperate for a running back. And I do get much more concerned about like quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight end missing time in camp. He played in a very pro style offense at Ohio State. He needs to get calloused up a little bit in training camp and learn to take these hits at the NFL level, but I'm not overly concerned about it. Even if there's a slow start, for the first few weeks as he is getting conditioned, I still think that over the second half of the season, he's going to be the workhorse here. He's a very good prospect. So yeah, I think right now, he's a guy that I'm willing to reach for in drafts because I think the ceiling there is so high. Combine him signing with the team or potentially signing to the team at some point, assuming he signs, I'd prefer Quinshon Judkins over Caleb Johnson without thinking twice.
Okay, interesting, because I have them right now ranked back to back, where I do think that once we get, and that's the whole thing, right? Is my ranking is reflective of him not even being signed by the team, and the
Mhm.
idea that this isn't going to be a quick thing where he just like hops right back into camp and they're like, well, he's good to go. He's the starting running back for week 1. Like there's a good shot that he's not playing week 1 or week 2 or week 3. And they're going to give him limited touches as they get into like week 4, 5, 6. And then it's finally a big role when we're in, mid season. And I think that's kind of the idea you have to have here. But I think that you have the same idea with guys like Caleb Johnson,
Right.
who you just mentioned. The difference is like, could it happen earlier for a guy like Caleb? That's sort of like the risks you have to take. Is he on a better offense? Like how bad or good could the Browns offense really be? And so I think that's sort of where my head is at. I have him ranked amongst the same guys like Caleb Johnson, Brian Robinson, Travis Etienne, Jordan Mason, J.K. Dobbins, Zach Charbonnet, Rashad White, all in that same area. I have him a little bit ahead of ADP. He's my running back 31 right now.
So he was my RB 20 before all of this stuff popped up. I preferred him to RJ Harvey. I preferred him to a lot of the other running backs, just because I'd assumed that he'd get plopped into that Nick Chubb role. And I'm not a big fan of Dylan Sampson. Jerome Ford is already
No.
dealing with an injury. Pierre Strong, I don't even know if he exists in
The
real
Olamide
life.
Zaccheaus of running backs, some might say.
Right. So Quinshon Judkins, I had him inside my top 20 before all this stuff popped up. I've got him at, RB 29, but it would not take a lot for me to start moving him up the ranks if we get any sort of good reports about Judkins in camp.
I'm here for Zaccheaus to be our Zach Ertz of the season.
That was Tyler Conklin last year was the guy.
Conklin, thank you. I knew it was some old white tight end. It was one of those
Olamide
guys.
Zaccheaus will outscore Tyler Conklin this year. Just put a stamp on that. No question.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to do a little more research on it before I take that bet. All right, Dallas Cowboys here. Man, like I will say this. There's not much changing with the Cowboys. It's simply Javonte Williams is still the default running back because of injuries, but that these running backs are coming back. I think the biggest question here is, are you buying into the offense actually being good? Because I see them as a similar situation to the Bengals, but at a better price too, where it's Dak Prescott's going to be throwing the ball a lot. The offensive line should be improved. The difference here is that with the Cowboys, there is no running game. So this is a team that's going to have to pass a lot, a defense that might be really bad if they don't have Micah Parsons, similar to the Trey Hendrickson deal over there in Cincy. Are you buying into this stuff? I've seen hype on guys like George Pickens and Jake Ferguson and various running backs. Are you actually buying in?
Yeah, I mean, I've got CeeDee Lamb as my second player off the board. We talked about this a while ago, but I prefer him to Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jameer Gibbs, Dak Prescott. I've got, I don't know exactly where I have him compared to consensus, but I've got him as my QB 12, so got him ranked as a low end QB 1. I think George Pickens here, finally some sort of semblance of a threat in the passing game alongside CeeDee Lamb. You could argue either way, but I think that, another good wide receiver there will only elevate the entire room. And then also getting really good reports about Cavante Turpin, that he has been, locked down that wide receiver 3 role, that he's getting used out of the backfield on some fun touches
Who
and
are you
whatnot. So,
today? Who are
I
you
mean,
today?
listen, we,
You've
we,
been,
we
you know what?
know
No, I know what it is now. You've been doing the Dynasty show too long, and
that
you're
has
looking at
something to
the
do with
fourth
it.
and fifth guy on the depth chart. You're like, man, he could really break out.
But I think it's important to be ahead of the curve because 2-3 weeks ago we were talking about Torrey Horton, who was going, undrafted in every single draft.
It's
Now
different.
Torrey Horton's going in like round 14. So same thing
Different.
like Cavante Turpin the last week. I've been drafting Cavante Turpin. Now he started to get some smoke and move up. Olamide Zaccheaus, he was going undrafted. Now he's moving up. I think it is important to be ahead of the curve on these guys going in rounds 18, 19, and 20 because as soon as they get a little bit of smoke, they will shoot up the board and then all of that value has been squeezed out.
That's right. You heard it. If you're doing your 20 round fantasy draft and these guys are going in round 17, you better get them in round 16.
I 20 round fantasy drafts are pretty normal here. Am I crazy for
It's
thinking that this is
no,
like
it's
way out of the
not.
norm?
No, it's what quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, flex, defense, kicker.
Yeah,
Looking at
8 to 10
10
bench
and
spots that easily pushes you to 18 rounds, 10 has
yeah,
bench spots, and you're at 20
eight.
rounds.
Yeah, okay.
Here's what I'll say.
It's
If you're in a league that has kickers and defenses, don't draft a kicker and a defense. Spend those last few
no, of
picks on
course not.
Olamide Zaccheaus and Cavante Turpin. And if we don't get good word about him over the next couple of weeks, cut him for a defense before week 1.
Yeah, or put them in your starting lineup. Be brave. All right, next up on here, Denver Broncos. Head coach Sean Payton wants more
Troy Franklin.
ground production.
No, I'm kidding.
Jeez, Dave. Pat Bryant. No relation to Joe. Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton wants to get more out of the ground game this year. Obviously, they go and they sign J.K. Dobbins. They go and they draft R.J. Harvey. What we did see, though, is that recently J.K. Dobbins rested with the starters last week. R.J. Harvey, though, has been looking better and better as the preseason goes on, whether that's been in camp or that's been in games. I think we're just going to see a 1-2 punch. And I hate to say it like this. We're going to see a 1-2 punch until one of these fighters, so to speak, goes down. And I think that if RJ Harvey were to miss time, we're going to get a lot of J.K. Dobbins with a little bit of Jaleel McLaughlin mixed in there and some Audric Estime, right? If the same thing happens the other way, J.K. Dobbins goes down, I don't think we're getting a full, workload for RJ Harvey. I think we're still going to get some Jaleel McLaughlin and some Audric Estime. I think it's just kind of pick your flavor, but no matter what, it's going to be the same ice cream. Like this is going to be the same running game where there's going to be a split because that's just how Sean Payton works.
And that's where I'm at. Like, I don't even know if there's huge contingent upside in either of these guys because if one goes down, yeah, we're just going to see Audric Estime or Jaleel McLaughlin or last year when they were bringing like Blake Watson or Tyler Bidet. Like, they will find guys off the street because Sean Payton is just hell bent on having a muddied backfield. Like, that is never, ever, ever going to change. But I will say the one thing that jumped out to me, and Alfredo, we talked about this a lot during the spring. RJ Harvey has this penchant for home run hitting where he wants to
Mhm.
bounce every single run outside. And that works when you're playing at UCF against guys that are 2 years away from being an accountant. That doesn't work when you're
Don't
playing
don't
in the
besmirch
NFL.
accountants, Jeff.
I'm sorry, but like, yeah, you can do that. And this is something like Trey Benson syndrome, DeAndre Swift syndrome. Like we see this with a lot of running backs. RJ Harvey, though, when he would trust himself to run between the tackles, great footwork, great power. And I think that that's something that we need to see kind of coached out of him. We saw this with Alvin Kamara early in his career and Darren Sproles early in his career as well. And there was one play specifically in the preseason game that jumped out to me where they were almost 10 yards out, gave the ball to RJ Harvey, and he just plowed it between the tackles, kept his legs churning, was able to score a touchdown. That's what I want to see from RJ Harvey. That first preseason game, he was able to lean on his athleticism a little bit and bounce one run outside, was able to turn the corner and get away, tried it again, and he got gobbled up in the backfield. And that's what's going to happen at the NFL level. So want to see him being a more disciplined runner, running between the tackles. And we did see this in this preseason game. So RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins, I like both of these guys at cost. J.K. Dobbins is the one I like a little bit better at cost, but still prefer RJ Harvey because of the upside.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I dislike in particular about RJ Harvey. It's more that I dislike about Sean Payton's use of running backs, which like makes me look at this and say, okay, we get the news that Quinshon Judkins is in camp, he's in shape, he looks good, first team running back. I would take Judkins over RJ Harvey for
Yeah.
redraft.
I mean,
Uh,
if Judkins is on the field and
yeah,
signed,
there's a
then
lot
yeah,
of ifs.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
like
yeah.
there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of ifs, but I think that would put him, in my opinion, right at the running back 27 for me behind Tyrone Tracy.
I think the important thing to remember with Sean Payton's offenses, though, is that so much of this fantasy production comes through the air, where a target is worth 2.5 times as much as a carry. And we have seen multiple Sean Payton seasons where he has had more than one running back get 50 plus targets. And I don't think that's out of the question. Based on what we saw from how Bo Nix plays last year, he's going to be checking down to these running backs a lot. So wouldn't shock me one bit if we see a season where both RJ Harvey and J.K. Dobbins can eclipse 50 plus targets.
Yeah, I think that the struggle for me, and I know we're going long on this one, the struggle for me is like you're going to pay RB2 price for a guy that's going to be an RB2, right?
Right.
And like that's not
Yeah.
what you want. You want to pay an RB2 price for let's just say like a Tyrone Tracy who maybe finishes as a top 12 guy, whether how likely that may be or not. That's what you want is the upside. And like that's what worries me the most. That's why I do agree with you that I like both these guys, but I like J.K. Dobbins better because of the price point on him.
Yeah,
Uh,
at cost, definitely prefer Dobbins. Yeah, you're paying up for Harvey, but I think the hope is that like he can rip off those big plays like he did in college, and that he can get half of a backfield and still give you RB1 production. I'm not buying into that. So like if he's there at cost, I'm okay taking him. But J.K. Dobbins is a guy I'll reach around for to get on my team.
there's a lot of reports coming out for the Detroit Lions here about how great they looked against the Miami Dolphins in practice, and we did the same kind of context thing last week when we talked about it. How Dolphins are missing like six of their biggest starters, seven of their starters, whatever, from the practice field. But the reports have been that the Lions look great and that Amon-Ra St. Brown is getting targeted a bunch. But really, the news from this last week is that tight end Sam Laporta flashed in the joint practices, and then he comes down with an undisclosed injury. Puts him on the sidelines. Team officials are saying it's for a short time. Dave, we've talked about this. It's like trying not to go out and find injuries, find players that have injuries. And with Sam Laporta already being a guy that was getting drafted, I think a little bit earlier than we want him to go. Just he's the tight end 4 on most ADPs, not necessarily in our rankings, but this I think makes me a lot more uncomfortable with taking Sam Laporta.
Yeah, for sure. And I was already a few spots below consensus on him. So Sam Laporta isn't a guy that I've drafted a ton of. I do want to say these reports about like Amon-Ra St. Brown lighting it up last week, Sam Laporta lighting it up last week, Jameson Williams lighting it up last week. I think that's a bigger indictment on Miami's defense than anything else.
They
And
might be the worst secondary in the league.
dude, it is bad. It is really, really bad. I mean, there were plays like where you would just see like a defender just standing there like with his arms out like he's playing a basketball defense, and like
If
Amon-Ra St. Brown would just cruise past him and he's just like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And Amon-Ra St. Brown just walking into the end zone.
let me contextualize this. I'm in a group chat with a bunch of my friends here in South Florida. We're all Dolphins fans, and all they've been saying is, "Man, is there a team that has more injuries than us?" And then they started listing it, and I was like, "Those are all defensive backs.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all defensive backs. It's just all the entire secondary and the pass rush." Now the Dolphins are looking at Matthew Judon, but like, not trying to make this a Dolphins defense thing, but like, yeah, let's contextualize these things. Lions are probably still going to be a great offense.
Right.
I don't know if there's too many of these guys like that I'm super jazzed up for, aside from Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams. I think Amon-Ra is still going to be fine at value.
Oh,
Sam
yeah.
Laporta, though, is the one that I'm just like, Sam Laporta, Jared Goff. I'm not reaching for these guys.
One of my favorite plays from this week that, there were a lot of Lions highlights that made the timeline. Did you see the one where Melifonwu, who has been in Detroit for the last couple of years, he
Mhm.
was trailing Jameson Williams, and when he realized he was beat, he just gave up on the play. Like
Yeah.
he knew he
Yeah.
wasn't closing that gap on Jameson Williams, so he just jogged off the rep and just let Jameson Williams walk
He's like,
into
all
the end
right.
zone. Yeah, he's just like, I've played against this speed in practice for the last 3 years. I'm not even trying.
That's that toughness and that no quit attitude in Miami that
Mhm,
we got. It's
mhm.
great.
I was looking on a bunch of sports books this weekend, seeing if I could find a place to place a bet for first coach fired on Mike McDaniel, but couldn't find a sports book that offered that anywhere. So anybody in the comments, if you're able to find a sports book that has that bet out there, please let me know because I'd like to wager some of my hard-earned American dollars on Mike McDaniel getting fired.
We do not promote gambling and profiting off of people's downfall, Dave.
Green Bay
All
Packers.
right. Green Bay Packers here. Running back Marshawn Lloyd injured again. And this is such a shame because he is genuinely a really good player. He was a great prospect coming out of USC. This just sucks, man, because it just seems like even our own Adam Hutchinson has said, okay, he's injury prone.
Right.
There's not
He might
another
not
way
want
to
that
look
on
at
record, but he said that in a group
Right.
chat. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Cut that out, editors. But yeah, like this is not something that Marshawn Lloyd, man, with him being out, I think that we kind of lean into the same Josh Jacobs that we got last year, a guy who's just going to dominate touches, whether that's through the air, on the ground, touchdowns, all of it. Like this running game goes through him. Josh Jacobs, Dave, is a guy that we had talked about as second round pick, kind of very solidly a second round pick. Looking at average draft position, he is at the running back 9, behind Jonathan Taylor, ahead of Bucky Irving. Are you still taking him behind Jonathan Taylor? I know you had Taylor higher than Jacobs. Is that still the case, even with this?
I've got Taylor a few spots ahead of him. I also have Chase Brown and Devon Achane and Ashton Jinty ahead of him. So I've got him as my RB10. And yeah, I think Taylor is the one that makes a difference. I have all those guys kind of shuffled around a little bit, but RB10, I think he's a totally fine value if he's there in the middle to end of round 2. But yeah, Marshawn Lloyd, would love to see him healthy. I don't know. I'm workshopping a joke right now that has to do with like soft tissue injury and tissue paper for Marshawn Lloyd. I haven't quite nailed it down, but maybe later this week I'll be ready to go live with it.
It's not going great for you right here. Yeah, I got Josh Jacobs my running back 9. I just don't think that there is a more solid pick in round 2 where you're not really worried about an overwhelming injury history. You're not worried about a guy needing to break out. You're not worried about maybe an offense that hasn't proven it. You kind of know what this team is. You know who Josh Jacobs is. You know what the value is. I think if you are a risk-averse person that just wants an absolutely solid round 2 pick, I think Josh Jacobs is that guy for you, especially if you go wide receiver in round 1.
Exactly.
All right, Houston Texans running back Joe Mixon has had a steady negative drumbeat. Just tumbling down draft boards. Nick Chubb is reportedly trending to be the starter on this team. There's also been, yeah, I know. Did you vomit a little bit in your mouth there, pal? Yeah. Listen, man, like it's hard. It's hard to get behind this and say like I'm all aboard the Nick Chubb train, and be in on the Texans offense, one with a bad offensive line, an older running back with an injury history. If anything, I think I'm skipping out on Nick Chubb, Dave, and I'm doing one of these late round draft picks on a Dameon Pierce or a Woody Marks and saying maybe one of these guys becomes something. I mean, Dameon Pierce, last time he was a full-time starter, he was running back 15 in points per game. Like there's don't make the face. It happened. These are historical events.
Yeah,
These are
Jordan
historical
Howard
events.
was an RB1 a while back too, and
he's not even in the league, Dave.
It was James Robinson. I mean, Dameon Pierce basically isn't in the league. Like,
what are you talking
this guy hasn't
about?
done anything. Like he's on the depth chart.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Olamide Zacchaeus. I don't understand it. All right. Why are you hating?
I will die on the hill, and maybe I will just have egg all over my face for this, but I have been saying it for weeks now. I do not think that this is their week 1 running back room. Brian Robinson Jr., potentially getting traded. Like this seems
Spoilers.
like the Houston Texans are going to call and offer a 6th for Brian Thomas Jr., maybe wait until Devin Singletary gets cut. I do not believe it that they're going to go in with Nick Chubb, Dameon Pierce, and Woody Marks as their running back group.
Yeah, because the Texans never make poor decisions. I think I'm just going to avoid them. I think I'm just going to avoid
that's why I'm avoiding them, because I think they're going to add to it, and that's it. You know what's even more exciting than the RB15 finish a couple years ago was the one game that Dameon Pierce actually played last year, 176 rushing yards. It was a pointless Week 18 game, but
that's
noteworthy.
Stick that in your Olamide Zacchaeus and smoke it, Dave. All right, next team on here, Indianapolis Colts. This has just been, I don't even want to say an interesting team to follow, but it's just like there's been a roller coaster where, oh, the offense looks good. No, it doesn't. This guy's going to start. No, he's not. This guy's healthy. No, he's not. Wide receiver Josh Downs missing practice. He's had his hamstring injury, and that's really opened up the door for Tyler Warren to be the guy in this passing offense who has been leading the way with targets. We don't want to read too much into preseason numbers, but 93% of the starter snaps. He got 10 of 11 of the Daniel Jones dropbacks, who, by the way, Daniel Jones is now favored to be the starter for this Colts team. And that
Snip,
is
snap, snip,
that
snap,
is
snip, snap.
that is huffing some copium if I have ever seen it. Colts fans, I'm so sorry that this is what's happened. We just don't see Daniel Jones for a minute. We're like, you know what? You know who should start? Is that Daniel Jones? But Tyler Warren, Dave, has been the guy leading all pass catchers and targets. He seems like this could be a real thing where Tyler Warren is just a really good rookie tight end for fantasy football purposes.
Yeah, with the Sam Laporta injury, I am taking a cautious approach to that one. I bumped him down a couple spots. So Tyler Warren is now my tight end 8. Colson Loveland is my tight end 9. Talked about it a lot so far this offseason, but tight ends that get top 15 draft capital in the NFL draft typically make pretty big impacts as rookies. Tyler Warren is a great prospect. We've heard nothing but good things since OTAs and rookie mini camps. And then he showed up at training camp and was immediately dominating. So I don't think I'm underselling it when I say, when I talk about Brock Bowers last year and Sam Laporta 2 years ago and Kyle Pitts 4 years ago, these tight ends now can hit the ground running immediately. So I've got him as my tight end 8, like I said, but there is kind of, the Travis Kelsey, TJ Hawkinson, Mark Andrews. I'm willing to take those guys if they fall below ADP, but it is so easy passing on those guys, knowing that if I just wait another 2 or 3 rounds, I can get Tyler Warren or I can get Colson Loveland. These guys have such high ceilings. I'm very, very in on these 2 rookie tight ends.
Yeah, I have Tyler Warren as my tight end 11, but that's not really indicative of how I feel because this is a guy that can absolutely be the exact same thing as Sam Laporta, who I have at tight end 5. Like it's all right there. It's for the most part with these tight ends, unless you know that the guy is going to be getting crazy volume, it's all about what the touchdown upside can be. And with Tyler Warren, he's got multiple ways of getting these touchdowns, whether it's running on the ground, it's being that big target in the red zone, which let's just hope the Colts can get to the red zone. But I mean, if he
Lining him
can
up at
lead this,
halfback and using him
yeah,
in goal line situations. So I think
that's what I
like
said
if
on
you
the
have to
ground
make a
game.
comp, I think Tyler Warren is kind of the Brock Bowers with his usage where he's moving all over the place. Colson Loveland is more of the Sam Laporta, the guy who's going to play out of the slot a lot and rip you up the seam. But I think that there are pretty realistic comps for both of these players and how they're going to be used this season.
I think there's a lot of Jonnu Smith. I know that's not like a
Yeah.
sexy name to say, but there's a lot of Jonnu Smith to how uh, Tyler Warren can be used this year for the
Mhm.
Colts, and I think it's there. All right, next team on here, Jacksonville Jaguars. We've been talking about this running back room all off season, and I think for now it does really appear to be just a two-man race, a two-man committee until something happens where Bashaw Tutin needs to be in there, but it does really appear to be Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby as the guys that have been taking first team reps, and they look good, by the way. Like Travis Etienne out there getting 8 yards per carry in this Liam Cohen rushing offense. Tank Bigsby gets the start in the second preseason game after Etienne started in week 1. Bigsby got himself a nice catch and run, good yardage out there. Tutin seems to be the clear running back 3 on this roster, and just for my own sake, I wanted to say LaQuint Allen got some decent usage out there. 2 carries for 18 yards, 4 receptions for 24 yards. He's showing that he can be involved in that pass game and should be.
Mhm.
So I would not be surprised. This team uh, could, Dave, it's very possible, and a lot of the speculation is that they could be setting up one of these guys to be traded, whether it's Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne. Um, do you think that's likely? And is there a guy that you prefer out of this group?
I'm willing to throw darts at all of them. I think they're all
Yep.
pretty accurately priced now. I think we had it was egregious a few months ago when Bashal Tutin was the first guy off the board and
Weird.
Travis Etienne was getting pushed way, way down and Tank Bigsby was free at the end of your drafts. It does seem like it's kind of balanced out now to where they're all good values. But if you're asking me to predict how this room is going to shake out, I have no idea. What we saw last year with Liam Cohen is they were willing to just do this hot hand approach, like, hey, Bucky Irving's playing well, let's give him 25 touches next week, and hey, Sean Tucker, he's running pretty well, let's give him a bunch. And I think it could be in line for something similar this year. Travis Etienne, very much so, being the Rashad White guy, the guy who's going to be on the field a lot because he's a good pass blocker and he can run routes out of the backfield and catch the ball. And I think that probably gives him the safest floor of the group because he'll be out there and he'll be catching passes. But this is one of those teams that I think could be a little bit frustrating, where you could see like a month where Tank Bigsby is just giving you 150 yards and a touchdown every single week. You think you got an RB1, and then all of a sudden he gets pushed to the back burner for Bashaw Tootin, who comes in and is blistering for a few weeks. It's going to be a very frustrating committee of a backfield. So ETN is the one that I'm okay taking here. But I think they're all priced pretty accurately.
I mean, they're just so low in terms of ADP. Like they're aside from the Cowboys, this is really the lowest that you can
Mhm.
draft a starting running back and it make a difference. Like this is something that has been proven is buy into ambiguous backfields at the right price. And so yes, like this is one of those places in Jacksonville at least where you can get and this might sound crazy, RB1 return on a guy that you're drafting as an RB4 really for your fantasy team. And it's
Even if
just
it's just for
because
a
of the
couple of
ecosystem.
weeks. Like
Right.
you don't need a guy who's starting for 17 weeks at the running back position. Like if I could
I
play in
don't.
these little windows where it's like, hey, Tank Bigsby's going to be an RB1 for the next 3 weeks, I'm happy with that.
All right, next up on here, Kansas City Chiefs. Kareem Hunt suffers a quad injury. And Dave, it just seems more and more likely that Isaiah Pacheco is going to be the workhorse running back for this team. I know you and I are higher than most on Pacheco. I've got him as running back 20. I don't remember where you have him, Dave, but we are both ahead of Football Guys average ranking and ahead of ADP. Does this push him up even further for you? Where is he?
I've got him at RB19.
Okay.
And I mean, Kareem Hunt wasn't a guy that I was anticipating would cut into his workload much. My early like spring, early summer fade on Isaiah Pacheco had a lot to do with the excitement around Brashard Smith, but it appears that we got Darwin Thompson again. We always fall for these like day three rookies that can make splashy plays in Kansas City, but they just never really pan out. It sounds like Elijah Mitchell actually has the edge over Brashard Smith right now. So yeah, Isaiah Pacheco, I think you can just mark him down for like an 80% opportunity share in this offense.
Which, by the way, that puts him right next to, at least in rankings, for me, it puts him next to guys like James Conner, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, Trevion Henderson, Chuba Hubbard, Tony Pollard. Like he's right there,
Yep.
pretty solely in that good RB2 area. If I'm looking at ADP, Dave, Isaiah Pacheco is at running back 24, going as the
So he's been
68th
moving up
pick.
quite a bit. He was like in the 30s for a while there. So people are finally starting to catch on, but still think that there is just, pretty undervalued. I've got him in between DeAndre Swift and RJ Harvey in my rankings.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that he can finish as a top 15 running back and he's getting drafted as a running back 24. Like that's
Yep.
just that's what you want to see. All right, Las Vegas Raiders here. A weird thing that's sort of brewing in Las Vegas is that the Raiders are using a lot of have not been using multiple tight end formations, which like Chip Kelly has done this in the past where he's been able to make tight ends very relevant in his offense, but we've also seen him use multiple tight ends in his offense a lot. And not a lot. Man, I keep mixing that one up. But Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer keep going back and forth as to who is on the field. And it's weird because I do think you have the opportunity here to put Brock Bowers out at wide receiver while you have Michael Mayer on the field as tight
I
end.
think.
Maybe they're just not unveiling that stuff, right? But so far through the preseason, you've got Bowers playing 47% of the first team snaps, Michael Mayer 63% of the first team snaps in this last game. Um, there's a little bit of like people getting nervous about Brock Bowers. I think you and I don't have him as our tight end one overall. Maybe that's changed. I still have Trey McBride
I've
there.
I've had him as my tight end 3 all off season.
Oh, who's tight end
I
two for
I
you,
pref
Kittle?
I prefer Kittle as my tight end 1, McBride's my tight end 2. So I've got the top 3 just in inverse in my rankings. That's how I've had it.
So I've been doing more and more of the home league drafts lately and seeing Brock Bowers go on the 1-2 turn or
Mhm.
middle round two. I'm talking like pick 14, 15, right in there. And it just seems like a lot of people. I mean, ADP still has him as the 16th overall pick, which Dave, I can't get behind that. Like, I can't take him over Drake London, AJ Brown, Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Chase Brown, like a Lad McConkey, Trey McBride, even who's going basically a full 10 spots later, a full round later.
And that's exactly why, like, I haven't been able to draft Brock Bowers. It's not that I don't think he's a good player. It's just the opportunity cost is so high, knowing that I can get Trey McBride a round later, that I can get George Kittle 2 rounds later, that I can throw darts on these Colson Lovelands and Tyler Warrens and Tucker Crafts in the middle round. It's just so hard for me. Like, this isn't a Travis Kelsey situation where this guy is
That's what I was
just
gonna say.
outperforming everybody else by 5 points per game for a decade straight. That's not what we're getting here. We are really projecting a big step forward in year two, and it definitely could happen. But if Brock Bowers doesn't take that step forward, it's one of the worst picks you could make in the first round, or first 2 rounds, I should say. So I'm definitely not overreacting. I think that a lot of times coaches in preseason games will try to get other players out there in different
100%.
packages so they can kind of analyze them a little bit. But there was a report that I read the first week of Raiders training camp that I said, I'm gonna store this just in case anything weird happens here. Brock Bowers got like a veteran rest day, basically. They said it was no serious injury, but they gave him a day off. And they said Michael Mayer was the star of camp that day, that he was making big plays after the catch, that he was running through defenders, that he was unguardable. And we gotta remember, this is a guy who was drafted in round two. Like, they had big expectations for Michael Mayer. And if you flash back to last year's draft when they took Brock Bowers, I remember the resounding kind of feedback from that was like, "What are you doing? You guys already have Michael Mayer, who's a great tight end," and we didn't see a lot from him last year. So it wouldn't shock me if we see Mayer on the field more than we expect. I do wish that Brock Bowers would just line up in the slot, but it sounds like Jacoby Myers kind of has that lockdown. So I'm definitely not panicking because he's a really, really good player. But I saw, the 29% target share for Trey McBride last year. I see the San Francisco 49ers and all the moves that they've made and pass catches that they've lost. And that's why I prefer Kittle and McBride to Bowers. I just can't get behind spending an early second round pick on him.
Jacoby Myers has been one of my favorite values in fantasy drafts. He's going as
Yep.
that wide receiver 38. With Geno Smith being as sharp as he is, with Myers being the clear cut wide receiver one, he should be going a lot higher.
Dude, he's
All right.
been underrated for like 5 years straight. And like nobody ever wants to.
He's
It's
Tyler
weird.
Lockett.
Jacoby, 100%.
He's
Yep.
Tyler Lockett. It's the same
Yep.
thing. All right. Los Angeles Chargers running back Najee Harris has returned to limited running and drills, but the team doesn't really give us any clarity of if he could start the season, when he'll be back to full practicing. Offensive coordinator Greg Roman insists that the backfield is still going to be a committee, and that regardless of if it's Amarian Hampton and Najee out there or Amarian Hampton and someone else, should this be dampening how much we like Amarian Hampton in drafts? I've seen him originally, he was going fourth round. I've seen it get pushed into third round. I'm in the middle of a draft right now where Amarian Hampton went as the pick 210 in
Yep.
a home league draft. So this is like we are at full hype mode, the peak of hype for Amarian Hampton.
Yeah, and I think the biggest story is Rashawn Slater out for the year. I mean, we have seen
Oof.
this offense. You look at what they do with and without Rashawn Slater. He's arguably, behind Justin Herbert, maybe the most impactful player on this offense. So losing him is pretty big. But I wouldn't expect to see Omarion Hampton just be the lead back out the gate week one. That's not in Greg Roman's philosophy. So I know you're going to roll your eyes here, but Raheem Sanders, maybe a guy worth targeting in your like 24 round drafts, pick it up on your waiver wire in dynasty leagues. Jokes aside, I mean, I don't think there's going to be enough for him to
No,
be
commit to the
impactful.
bit. Commit to the bit. Just keep listing third, fourth, and fifth depth chart players.
I'm a big fan of Raheem Sanders, though. I hope he gets an opportunity, and he is cut from the same
Call him
cloth as
Rocket.
Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris and Gus Edwards and all these other guys we've seen find success. That being said, Najee Harris, his injury, I'm not an eye doctor. Matt Waldman, however,
Wait,
comes from
what?
a family where he has an ophthalmologist who kind of gave his breakdown of this injury and says that the recovery is pretty straightforward. The problem is that if you rush the recovery at all, it can cause more damage to the eye. So he thinks that whether it's week one, week two, week three, we should see Najee out there sooner rather than later. And that when he does return, there's not going to be a ton of limitations on his usage. It just, takes the eye time to recover. So I think that as we get into like the second half of the season, this probably will be like a 60-40 split in favor of Hampton. But I think people are getting a little over their skis with the second round draft picks.
One, I need you to stick to the bit. If you're going to do it, you do it. Two, I do believe that yes, we are a little too far on Omari and Hypton right now. Like it's just it's gone way too much at this point. Like we know that Greg Roman is very similar to Sean Payton and wants to split carries in his backfield, and it's not we don't see a lot of passing volume for these running backs either, even though that is a Justin Herbert specialty. Like there's just I get worried we are doing too much with Amari Hampton. Let's go to the next team. Los Angeles Rams. This one, Dave, I think is interesting because
Since we started recording the show, Matthew Stafford started practicing. So when we started
look at
recording
that.
this an hour ago, that's probably the biggest story. Whatever we got on the show sheet probably doesn't supersede
No,
the fact
no,
that Stafford is
this
back in
does.
practice.
No, this does, and no, you're wrong. I actually looking at this over the weekend. Obviously, the eye test tells you that Matthew Stafford is a much better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo, but that is their backup there, and we've seen him and other players remain productive. Um, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily as worried. Like Matthew Stafford practicing doesn't take away the fact that he has to go into like a chamber, like Darth Vader, and like heal his body every single week. Like it's just crazy. And also with the injury he has, he could be out at any moment. Like we know the risk that comes with this. I think more so. What I want to talk about here is I think that we might have the wide receivers flip flopped on this team where reports coming out of Rams camp is that Davante Adams has been the wide receiver one, often getting first targets on reads, and that Puka Nacua has been more of the complimentary guy. And Puka is also a guy who has dealt with injuries. So Puka's a guy that I think everyone is taking in round one or early round two at the latest, whereas Davante Adams sometimes has fallen round three, round four, or however late you want to look at him. Could we actually just have this mixed up and switched?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like if you were to just analyze both of these guys on their pure talent, Devontae Adams is clearly the better wide receiver, but he is very old, and Puka Nacua has youth on his size, and we have seen that this offense really does a lot to try to get the ball to Puka Nacua, where he can create after the catch on these short little drag routes and screens. And I think that Devontae Adams is just a better receiver. Like you can line him up against press coverage, he's going to win that battle almost every single time, but I think they're still going to have some of these manufactured touches for Puka. So if you're asking me if like it would surprise me if Devontae Adams outscored Puka Nacua, not at all. But that's banking on Devontae Adams staying healthy for a full 17 games, Matthew Stafford being healthy for a full 17 games. I think if we have to revert to Jimmy Garoppolo at any point in this season, then they probably put the focus a little bit back more on Puka Nacua. I think right now they're trying to establish as much chemistry as they can between Jimmy G and Devontae. But I think that once this offense is at full speed, we're still going to see those touches across the middle that make Puka Nacua so valuable.
Dave, Devontae and Jimmy Garoppolo have the chemistry. They were together in Las Vegas. It went so well.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Um,
I will say that if you watch practices like the joint practices with Dallas,
mm,
Devontae Adams looks as sharp as ever. I mean, he was just cooking dudes in that Dallas secondary. He getting up there in age, but he still got plenty in the tank.
I've got Devontae as my wide receiver 15 right now, which is right in lockstep with football guys consensus, but it's a little bit above ADP that has him at wide receiver 18. Puka Nacua, I have him at my wide receiver 6 instead of football guys has him at wide receiver 5. That actually goes along with ADP. I'm not sure where you have these guys.
Yeah, I've got that Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Drake London. I've got that tier so tight. And like
I've
right
got
now, that's
London
my
at the
wide
top of
receiver
it.
5, 6, and 7. Yeah, and I'm thinking about kind of flipping it and making Drake London my wide receiver 5 and Puka my wide receiver 7. Like those guys are just razor thin margins between the three of them. It's really tough to say it with my chest which one I really prefer.
If we want to be a little narrative here, none of those other guys have a shot at being the wide receiver 2 on their team.
Right? Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that's just a way to look at it. Right? Like Drake
Throw
London
Brian Thomas
and
Jr. in there
Nico.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, so like if you have Drake London and Nico, those are the guaranteed wide receiver ones in their team. Whereas you could look
You
at
talked me into it, Alfredo. That's enough. Yeah.
Brian Thomas Jr., and Amon St. Brown all have the chance of being the second most targeted player on
Yeah.
their offense.
You talked me into it. Drake London, my wide receiver 5, just moved him up.
I know how crazy it sounds. So crazy, it just might work. All right, Miami Dolphins. Devon Achan's dealing with a lower body soft tissue injury. That's as much detail as we've been given. And then we were told the process could take between days and weeks. So we're not getting a lot of information here, but I will say one thing is like, if you're worried about it, then I wouldn't take him in the first round. Like that's just one thing. Like I just don't take him in the first round. See if he can fall to you in the second round, and you take the value as it comes to you. But Ollie Gordon appears to be, Dave, the running back 2 emerging from this offense is Jalen Wright has just been really struggling here in the NFL. He comes from a Tennessee Volunteers offense where everything was very spread out. He would go up against very light boxes. That means the defenders that are in the run box area, defensive linemen, linebackers, and such. And he's always had massive run lanes to go through. But now he gets to the NFL and he's finding that he's got to create his own run lanes. And it's not working out well for him. It hasn't worked out well for him in the NFL games, preseason games. Camp has looked okay, but Ollie Gordon, despite being the slower, less explosive guy, he's been making big plays. And he looked good again recently in the preseason.
Yeah, this isn't worth ignoring. Devon Achane does definitely have a history of
Mm-hmm.
injuries. This is becoming a bit of a pattern, and we're close enough to the season now that like if weeks are getting thrown around, we aren't even weeks away from kickoff. I mean, it is
Right.
less than 2 weeks until it's here. So definitely not ignoring this move. I moved Devon Achane a couple spots down my rankings. I moved him
Same.
behind Ashton Jinty, behind Derrick Henry. So I've got him as my RB9 now, which is, a pretty big fall from where I
Oh,
had him earlier
wow.
in the offseason. That also
Wow.
is coupled with a lot of the just not great vibes surrounding Miami's camp in total. I also moved Tyreek Hill down a little bit. Jalen Waddle is the guy that I'm still kind of holding it down for because I think
Yep.
that, if he's healthy, they're just going to have to force balls from him, but to him. But we're not getting good reports about Tyreek Hill. We're hearing that Tyreek Hill and Tua have like hardly practiced together at all this season, and they don't have that chemistry building. We're hearing that they want to get the ball out of Tua Tagovailoa's hands quickly, so he isn't risking getting sacked. So Tyreek Hill moved him down quite a few spots. I did have him ahead of Devontae Adams. I made that switch over the weekend, and then Devon Achane, who I already moved down a couple of spots just because of the overall vibes with Miami. Now with this injury, I moved him down even further. So I had him inside my top 5 a few weeks ago, and now he's fallen to RB9.
I'm sort of just doing a thing here as I'm looking at my running back rankings where it's like once I get into that RB 40 whatever range, it's just who is the absolute on it like reassured RB2 on a team. And
Corey
like
Krosky
to
Merritt. We'll get there
okay.
eventually.
Okay. All right, let's do that then. Yeah, by the way, I have moved Devon Achan. I know I made it sound crazy that you had him at running back 9. He's my running back 7,
Yeah.
which is like not crazy. Like I've got him behind the same guys. Ginty, Henry, McCaffrey. I think you have to put him in the same bucket as McCaffrey because we've seen that there's been the health concerns and now we're going into draft season with health concerns. And I think that's the bigger risk here is that you're going into a season already with it, man. Like if he was healthy, it's a different story. Speaking of really good players with health concerns right now, Justin Jefferson continuing to be treated cautiously for a hamstring strain. I hate hearing stuff like this. And I think you and I are one of the few people that don't have Justin Jefferson as the unequivocal wide receiver two. Um, you're
That
in the
seems
first
to have
round.
flipped on most platforms. I see CeeDee Lamb typically going ahead of Justin Jefferson in most
Okay.
places now
Well,
because
because
this
of
has
the
been like
injury.
3 weeks now that he's been dealing with. Yeah, I had CeeDee
Yeah,
Lamb
yeah.
before the injury,
That's
but
what I'm
it
saying.
seems like the injury has flipped that.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I was saying. It's like we were kind of already there, so like this hasn't moved him in our rankings. But I think one thing I want to ask Dave is like what people are wanting to know now is they're in the first rounds of their fantasy drafts, and Justin Jefferson seems to be like the pick 5 or pick 6. Would you skip out on Justin Jefferson and go for, let's say, an Ashton Genty, a Christian McCaffrey, a Malik Neighbors? Are you bypassing Justin Jefferson because of the JJ McCarthy of it all and the hamstring and this and that?
That's a tough question. I've still got him as my wide receiver 6, and man, I'd love to see him out there.
I'm sorry. Did you say you're
Or
wide
I'm sorry,
receiver
I'm sorry.
6 or
My
your sixth
sixth
overall player?
sixth overall player.
Oh
Yes, I'm
man.
sorry. I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Got him as my 6th overall player. So I've got him ahead of McCaffrey, Neighbors, London, Nico. But it's starting to, think about it enough. Like, do I put McCaffrey ahead of him? Do I
It's a
put
little
Drake London and
stinky.
Malik and Neighbors ahead of him? It's not a great feeling, especially when this is a new to him quarterback. And JJ McCarthy's out here in camp every single day, building a rapport with Jordan Addison, building a rapport with TJ Hawkinson. Aaron Jones getting used deep downfield as a receiver. I mean, we know Justin Jefferson is good enough that like I could probably go out there at quarterback and still get Justin Jefferson to 500 yards on a season. So, all he's got to do is throw it in the general vicinity, and Justin Jefferson is going to come down with it and make plays. But definitely want to see him out there and building that chemistry with JJ McCarthy as soon as possible.
Humble brag by Kluge saying he could get Jordan or Justin Jefferson to 500 yards.
Dude, you put me in shotgun and just let me chuck balls downfield to Justin Jefferson. We can get him to 500.
You remember when Kendall Hinton had to start a game for the Broncos? You remember how that went?
I remember
That's a
Kendall Hinton
professional
not
athlete.
having Justin Jefferson on his team.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. Let's have that talk. All right, next on here, New England Patriots. We've heard the ups, we've heard the downs, but it does seem, according to reports, that Stephon Diggs is the clear number one wide receiver on the Patriots offense. The other guys seem to be having big roles here, potentially this for the starting X job. Dave, you're going to love this because we're talking about guys getting drafted in like the 18th round. Mac Hollins and Kayshon Boutte are
Hmm.
battling for the starting X job. So that could have one of those guys out there. I would hope for the offense's sake, it's Boutte
Oh
out
yeah.
there. For fantasy's sake, I'd probably just say Mac Hollins because whatever. But having those guys out there, have Steph Diggs at the Z, the guy you can move around the offense, and then like actually have him interchange a little bit with Demario Douglas, who both guys can play the slot at the Z and have them move around and be creative. Um, Stephon Diggs, I know we've been worried about injury, age, but we've also been saying like there is potential for targets here in this offense. Where is he at for you now? I know this has been kind of a fluctuating live thing.
Yeah, Stephon Diggs, I've got him still pretty aggressively, inside my top 30 wide receivers. So still drafting him with a lot of confidence. Not getting the same great reports that we were on his knee as we were when training camp first opened. I don't know if just like running, putting stress on it has caused it to tighten up a little bit, but definitely not panicking about that. Demario Douglas is still the guy that I very much so prefer above any of the other wide receivers, not named Stephon Diggs. But Kayshon Boutte, he is mixed into that Cavante Turpin, Olamide Zacchaeus, that tier that I'm willing to spend a 20th round pick on because we got to remember, Booty, when he was at LSU, a lot of people were talking about him as like the best wide receiver in that class. Came back his final year at LSU, dealt with some injuries, fell to day 3 in the draft, but this is a guy just dripping with talent. And we saw him last year, not a great season by any means, but we did see him start to be a formidable NFL player last year.
I've got Stephon Diggs looking at it right now, but of course I lost it as I'm saying it. There we go. Stephon Diggs at wide receiver 31 in my rankings.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's fair just to have him around some of these guys like a George Pickens, like a Ricky Pearsall, Zay Flowers, Travis Hunter, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Calvin Ridley. I think like that's sort of the bucket where I'm looking at him. And man, I think if there's a guy though, if we're talking about upside, Dave, like how does the upside compare? Because like I'm looking, I think the upside is better for Travis Hunter.
Oh yeah.
Is the upside better for Zay Flowers?
I don't think
But
so.
feels about the
Crowded, low
same.
volume offense. Yeah, I've got them. I got Diggs ahead of Zay Flowers.
Devontae Smith.
I've got Devonta Smith ahead too. Yeah, I've got him in the same bucket as like Chris Olave, Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
That's where I've got Stephon Diggs,
Yeah.
but I prefer
Okay.
Emeka Egbuka, George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, a lot of those guys.
Okay.
The one name we didn't mention is Demario Douglas. I've got him as my wide receiver 44.
We did mention Demario Douglas.
We just
Dave,
kind of glossed over it, but he's the guy that like actually matters more than Kayshon Boutte or
does he?
Mac Hollins or Kyle Williams or any of these other guys. Demario Douglas is almost assuredly going to be the wide receiver 2 on that team.
I hate what you've turned me into. I hate that you've turned me into the guy that just hates players that are outside the top 100. This is what I've become.
Slot receiver in a Josh McDaniels offense and getting really, really good reports since camp opened. Demario Douglas, I'd have to check, but I think he's my most drafted wide receiver this year behind Keenan Allen.
You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. That's what we're doing here. All right. Next team on here, New Orleans Saints. They're still not very good, but Kendre Miller looks like he is the running back 2 on this team, despite excitement about Devin Neal that a bunch of people had. But Kendre Miller also is like always hurt. So Dave is just a late round flyer. Like we can keep this really simple.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if there's no other running backs that I care about there, I'm not a big fan of Devin Neal. Kendry Miller's still very, very, very young. Finally freed from the shackles of Dennis
He's like
Allen.
16.
Yes, no, I am still going back to the well, drafting a lot of Kendry Miller and holding on to a lot of shares in Dynasty.
All right, next on here, New York Giants have looked weirdly good. Russell Wilson has looked good. Jackson Dart has looked like he's the next coming of Eli Manning. Are we excited about the Giants offense? Are we thinking that they maybe finally have it together under Brian Daboll? Does this kind of cement Malik Neighbors as a guy that I think you might want to be considering in the Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb tier?
I've
Question
got him.
mark.
Yeah, same tier, but I prefer those other guys to Malik Neighbors.
Okay.
But I've got Neighbors as my eighth or ninth player off the board. Russell Wilson, yeah, like we saw the big plays, but we also saw a horrendous interception. So I want to see Jackson Dart just for the fun of it. Russell Wilson, we know what he is at this point. Jackson Dart could be anything, like even a younger, more fun Russell Wilson.
It could even be a boat. All right, New York Jets. Justin Fields has been up and down throughout camp, but hasn't looked awesome in preseason games. And
Hmm.
it's been a lot of the same story, different chapter. It's just accuracy problems, processing limitations, handling pass rush, things like that. But we kind of know that's the case with Justin Fields. Does this mean that Garrett Wilson is just going to be incredibly uh, target heavy throughout the season here? I didn't want to talk about the running back situation again. We know, we get it
Yeah,
at this point. I'm curious about Garrett Wilson because I've come across this a lot where I'm in the third round of drafts and he's one of the better wide receivers available on the boards, and I'm saying, ooh, I really want that volume.
he is. It's just that tier of wide receivers when you look at how ADP shook out, where the wide receivers and the running backs kind of get folded together. I just prefer the running backs in that range so
Yeah.
much more than the wide receivers. So it's not that I have like anything against Garrett Wilson by any means, but when I can get Kyron Williams and Alvin Kamara and Josh Jacobs, James Cook and Kenneth Walker, I do
So you're
prefer those
taking those
guys to
guys
Garrett
over.
Wilson. Yeah.
And so hold on, because like ADP wise, Garrett Wilson is going in the third round. Those guys are not. Is this something where you're saying you'd rather take those guys in the third round as running backs instead of taking Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, I think that ADP just is wrong this year, pushing those wide receivers up like ahead of the running
Okay.
backs. I like all those running backs way more than I like the wide receivers going in that range.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And you know what? I also think that it's ADP right now is not indicative of what home leagues do.
Right, running
Uh,
backs
I, I,
always get steamed up. Like the week before the
yes.
preseason, everyone plugs in and they're like, "I need to get my running backs," and then before we know it, Garrett Wilson's going in round 4 and Alvin Kamara's going at the end of round 2.
And that's what I have seen where man, I was one pick away from Chase Brown, couldn't get him. I ended up taking Garrett Wilson, but that's the same league where Amari and Hampton went second round and
Yep,
running backs were just going.
Travion
Um,
Henderson isn't going to make it out of the second round in a lot of home league drafts this year based on how he's been
sheesh.
playing. Yeah,
I started off with Ashton Jinty, and I know people love hearing about our teams. I start off with Ashton Jinty. I get Drake London in the second round, and I'm saying, you know what? It's only like a 5 pick, 6 pick turnaround. I can get one of the running backs. There was Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, and Chase Brown on the
and
board.
he missed them all.
All four of them go in the next 6 picks. Absolutely
Oh,
insane.
yeah.
By the way, Josh Allen went at the 201. So it's not
Yep.
just running backs getting steamed up, quarterbacks are going to get steamed up as well. All right, let's get through and the last remaining teams here. Philadelphia Eagles, tight end Dallas Goddard. Looks like he's having a great training camp. Is this something where you're buying into it, or it's just kind of Dallas Goddard going to Dallas Goddard?
Dallas Goddard is not going to be fantasy relevant unless AJ Brown or Devonta Smith get hurt, and we kind of know that. Like, he's one of those guys who's going to give you pedestrian numbers, but can step up in a big way when one of those guys is out of the picture. So I'm not drafting him, but if Smith or Brown go down with an injury, definitely somebody I'll be interested in picking up off the waiver wire.
He's my tight end 15. I think
Yeah,
that tells you what you need to know.
yeah.
Pittsburgh Steelers. Running back Caleb Johnson looks to be the clear running back 2 in the offense, but he's looking better and better. Um, you notice the tone in my voice when I say that, though. It's not the same way I said it about RJ Harvey. This does seem to be Jalen Warren's backfield, and Caleb Johnson may get more play as the season goes on, but the problem with him has been that it's looked really bad. Like he is almost a zero in the passing game, and the get off out of the backfield. I mean that by like his acceleration, being able to find the run lanes. Unless it's like a toss sweep, we're talking outside zone stuff. It's not really working for Caleb Johnson, and that was a concern coming out of Iowa, but man, it just he gets onto the Steelers who use their second pick, and there's a big opening at running back, and I hate when we do this, but it is something that has happened. And right now, Caleb Johnson has been going pretty early in drafts. Dave, you mentioned
Dude, you
you'd
remember
rather
during
take
Dynasty
Quinshon
season
Judkins.
when people were saying like take Caleb Johnson before Travis Hunter and Tetaroa
Mm-hmm.
McMillan? Like people were so
Mm-hmm.
over their skis, and we were both sitting here like, listen, we like the player and we like the opportunity, but this is a guy who should be going at the 1-2 turn, like not inside the top 5 or 6 where he was going. And it's way too early to like claim victory and beat our chests over this, but
No, but
a lot of the concerns we had about Caleb Johnson are starting to rear its head now in training camp. And this is one that I've done a complete 180 on because we did a show a couple of weeks ago where I said, like, I will not draft Jalen Warren at cost. I expect
right.
Caleb Johnson to be the guy. It's impossible to ignore what we're hearing that, Jalen Warren and Aaron Rodgers are getting along well and that they've built this chemistry and that he's stepping up as a great pass blocker. And there's a lot to get excited about with Jalen Warren all of a sudden. I will say, I think the thesis with Caleb Johnson is that now you can get him at a huge discount, and he might be one of those players that is better late in the year, when it gets cold and blustery in Pittsburgh and they're trying to take the air out of the ball. If he can kind of find his footing over the first half of the season, maybe we see him be that late year guy. But if the Steelers aren't scoring a lot and he's a zero in the passing game, that just puts such a cap on his ceiling.
Yeah, I think we might be looking at a Trey Benson scenario here a little bit
Hmm.
where we're
Yeah.
going to be waiting and waiting and not really get anything. I'll say this. There's, and I don't mean this to be reductive of anyone, but there is a sweet spot of the people who like fantasy football but don't pay attention to all the details. And then there's the people who are like locked into every stat and every preseason game and the training camp reports. And
Hit
Caleb
me.
Johnson is, yeah, uh, Caleb Johnson's still going very high in drafts. Like, I don't think that ADP is reflected, at least in my, like the person, I'm in 3 drafts right now. He's going much like rounds higher than I am willing to take him. Um, I don't see it. Like, he's going right next to Trevion Henderson and David Montgomery and Isaiah Pacheco. There is no discount on him. And when I look at the running backs, I'm saying, like, I would take Pacheco, I'd take Pollard, I'd take we don't normally say this. I'd take Aaron Jones. I'll take obviously Tyrone Tracy. Like, there's a bunch of these guys I'd rather have than Caleb Johnson right now.
Yeah, I pushed him way down my rankings. I've got him at 30, 31. I don't know why I have Caleb Johnson ahead of J.K. Dobbins, but I'm changing that right now. So Caleb Johnson, yeah, my RB 31.
San Francisco 49ers, wide receiver Ricky Pearsall seems to be locked in for the
Dude,
wide
he
receiver
looked
one role.
so good. So good in
Yeah.
that preseason game. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited about this one. Yeah.
How high are you willing to draft Ricky Pearsall, Dave? Because
I mean, I've been
I'm
taking him
I'm
in
I'm
round
going full
5.
Snoop.
Yeah, I've been taking him in round 5. I lied when I said Demario Douglas is my most drafted player here. I'll just put it on the table right now. I'm looking. Keenan Allen's my most drafted player. Ricky Pearsall is my second most drafted player. I have him in 37% of my leagues. You know how aggressively you have to reach for somebody to get him in that many leagues? And a lot of the guys that I have, my most drafted players, they're typically those guys you see in the late rounds. This year, outside of Keenan Allen, it's Ricky Pearsall, Jamison Williams, Jackson Smith, and the Jigba. What I said in the early rounds, where it seems like these running backs are getting kind of pushed up, then I think you see this kind of pocket in rounds 3, 4, 5, 6, where I'm flipping aggressively to the wide receivers in that range. And that just kind of seems to be my like round 3, I'm taking JSN. Round 4, I'm taking Jamison Williams. Round 5, I'm taking either Tedero McMillan or Ricky Pearsall. Those are just some of my favorite values in drafts right now. And Ricky Pearsall looks all the part of an NFL wide receiver one.
Yeah, I think the latest you could take Ricky Pearsall in drafts is going to be round 6. And I want every single piece of that. Like, to me, I look at him the same way I'm looking at Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and Zay Flowers and a bunch of these guys that I've got him ranked right next to, as like, and a lot of those guys are wide receiver 2s on their teams, but they're established players, right?
Hmm.
We'd be projecting a sort of breakout for Ricky Pearsall here, and I wouldn't say necessarily a reduction of role for George Kittle, but he's sort of the de facto wide receiver 1 on that team.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the next. We got just a few left here. And Seattle Seahawks. Let's just make this very general here. The offense looked very good. The run game looked very good. The Clint Kubiak offense, everyone is buzzing about it. It fits Zach Charbonnet with the outside zone. This is what he was good at UCLA. It
Hmm.
fits the skill set for Ken Walker. It's essentially this. If Walker's healthy, he's going to be very good. If he's not healthy, Zach Charbonnet is going to be in and he's going to be very good. And I think where, like, that's the concerns. If you have concerns for Walker's injury history, take them both. Both of them. You can do it. There's no one stopping you. Now, what I would say is probably the biggest concern is that this offense from Clint Kubiak always looks good early. And then he's got to make those adjustments, right? Like, this is the
Hmm.
same thing we saw with the Saints. We've seen it in previous stops as well. So this is one thing where I'm just going to say, like, I think they are appropriately valued, but I do worry that these guys might get steamed up a lot based on preseason highlights.
Yeah, I still think they should be steamed up a
Okay.
lot. This is a pretty good offensive line. This is one of those teams, we talk all the time,
Oh,
like
no, they're not. This is a
their
bad
offensive
offensive
line.
line.
No, they made a lot of draft day investments and what's his name? Greg Zabel. Or no, who am I
Yeah,
trying to think
Gray
Gray
Zabel is
Zabel, yeah,
good. He's
he's
that
been
is
playing
one
great.
man.
I still think this is one of those teams. One of the things that I try to identify every year is like the offenses that everybody assumes are going to stink, and I'm like, what if they're just average? And I think the Seahawks could absolutely be an average offense. The Titans are the other one that jumps out to me that could be an average offense, and we are looking at the ADPs as that these are just going to be terrible, terrible offenses. So yeah, drafting a ton of Kenneth Walker, drafting a ton of Zach Charbonnet. The offensive line has looked solid in this preseason so far. They're carving out huge lanes for these running backs. I mean, every running back that we've seen step into the preseason has looked good so far. So Zach Charbonnet, yeah, technically the RB2 on his team, but I haven't drafted among quite a few, or ahead of quite a few guys that project to be the RB1s on their team. The upside is just so high, such a good player. Big fan of this scheme and how it pairs with his skill set. So yeah, I've got him inside my top 32.
Imagine either of these guys in the George Holani role. Man, that's the third
I'm
string
saying,
running
man,
back.
like if George Holani can look good in this offense, I'm very excited about Walker and Charbonnet.
The Seahawks were like, we've got the best running back out of Boise State this year in the rookie class. Okay. All right, Seahawks. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, wide receiver Mike Evans spending more time in the slot role, which I think is just
Why?
it's weird, but it's interesting. I kind of like it. It's the movie Weapons. It's weird, but I like it, and
Yeah.
I'll watch it. Um, man, like I don't know that I dislike this. If anything, it's putting him in an area where they can probably get him the ball a little bit easier and stop asking him to beat other teams. But I think what this does is kind of show that they're willing to move Emeka
Okay,
Egbuka
Booker.
anywhere on the field, and that Chris God to me, like what this is a bigger indictment on Chris Godwin, his
Oh yeah.
health, his role in the slot, and what happens to his role when he returns. To me, this is less about Mike Evans and just way more about Chris Godwin. I'm all the way out. I'm all
Yeah,
the
and
way
we
out.
also saw Jalen McMillan suffer a pretty scary
Injury. Yep.
injury, so we don't know if he's going to miss any time either. This is just weird though. Like Mike Evans, like if you just had to like manufacture an X receiver in a lab, it would spit out Mike Evans. Like I don't understand why they're playing him out of the slot, but good for him, I guess. I don't know. I'm still drafting Mecca Igbuka aggressively, and I don't want to say putting a fade on Mike Evans, but moving him down the rankings a few spots just means that he's one of those guys that my league mates are going to get before I will. I will happily pass on Mike Evans and take Mecca Igbuka later, who had a really, really nice touchdown catch in this preseason game.
All right, final two teams here. Tennessee Titans. Wide receivers have been up and down and not great. We had some good games from some good moments from Calvin Ridley. We've had a few good moments from Alec Iomanner. But the guy who's standing out right now, Chig Okonkwo, has been a full-time player for the Titans at the tight end position. Big change from sort of a 60% role that he's been in previous seasons. Dave, I know is the guy we've talked about as being a tight end sleeper. There's not many people drafting two tight ends in their league, but if you are and you're getting a backup tight end, I think this is a fun one to take a look at.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I think that you should draft two tight ends in your leagues. If you're missing out on the big guys, if you're not getting a George Kittle or a Trey McBride or a Brock Bowers or Travis Kelsey, something like that, I think it makes sense. Andrew Cooper talks about this, the yin and yang tight end strategy. And Chigakonkwo is definitely your yang, the guy with a really high ceiling that we, don't really know what to expect. But I think if you can draft a Zach Ertz or a Hunter Henry or a Dallas Goddard, one of these boring veterans, and then pair him up with a Chigakonkwo, kind of see how it plays out. Yeah, Okonkwo definitely. And what I just said about the Seahawks, the offenses everybody assumes are going to be bad that could just be average. Cam Ward looks like he is ready for the NFL. Like he has
Yeah.
played good in the limited taste that we've seen. Very, very much so. And on Chigakonkwo, who not only a full-time player, but also playing almost all of his snaps out of the slot. So this guy's not going to be a tight end. He's going to be a tight end playing out of the slot, getting a lot of targets, and has the athleticism to make big plays after the catch as well.
Final piece of news here. Washington Commanders are reportedly shopping Brian Robinson for the right price. And when this report initially came out, it was that they were shopping him. And then there was some context added that it's like, well, he's sort of been on the trade block for a little while. The team's not just going to give him up. They want to get the right price. And I mean, Dave, I don't know. The way I look at this is that I think every running back that is a little bit not older, but they're a veteran, they're on the final year of their contract, and they get a right price. I think every running back like that is up for sale in the NFL. I don't necessarily think this is big news. Now we could still get a Brian Robinson trade, and that would be a big impact on the Commanders team. But I don't know. I don't know if they're getting more than maybe a fifth round pick for him. And even that seems steep. We had the Jordan Mason trade happen. I
Mhm.
kind of put them as comparable players. And it was like, if I remember correctly, it was Jordan Mason and a sixth for a fifth and a sixth swap. There wasn't a whole lot in there. So I know you mentioned Brian Robinson could be a guy that goes to, let's say, the Houston Texans, which I don't think that offense fits his style at all. But if he goes somewhere that he's being afforded another starting role, does the arrow point up or down? Like, I would think this is actually the best scenario for him right now.
I mean, I don't. It's tough to think of a better scenario because right now his competition is Corey Krosky Merritt, an undersized day three running back, and Austin Eckler, who is years removed from being the good player he was. So I think this is probably like fantasy wise, I'd like to see him stay here. Of course, if he lands in
Dallas?
Dallas, that was the one that came to mind where I'd be like, okay, cool. Interest is peaked. I'm going to move Brian Robinson up a few spots, but I wonder how much too. Like looking, they've got about 17 million in cap space right now. This is the last year of Brian Robinson's deal where he's owed almost $4 million. And what we heard from Ben Standig, who's the guy who kind of broke this report, he said that if they're unable to trade him, that they might just flat out cut him. At this point, given the production that he has provided them, his age, how much he's owed, they might just be willing to move on. So it'll be interesting to see how this kind of shakes out. But I wonder if before they cut him, if they're hoping that they could trade him, find another team to take that salary cap on, which opens them enough money to give Terry McLaurin a front loaded contract and get him back on the field.
That's so weird. Like that's I'm sorry, like I don't get it. To me, that's just such weird business. You have a running back who's already productive. Like why cut him? The cap's not real. You can find money in other places. Like let this guy be your starter. He's in a contract year. If you really don't care about re-signing him, run him into the ground. Like that we're getting a little too far into NFL side of things, but I just don't get that. Like one iota.
I mean, he's getting the way that contract was set up. Like he's getting paid more this year than he was for the first 2 years of his contract combined. I don't know why it's kind of backloaded like that. I don't know if I've seen that frequently, but yeah, I mean, you look at like some of the veterans that are making similar
But this
money
is not
to him
enough.
this year.
It's not enough to matter. He's making like the cap hit is $3.6 million. Like that's the thing that's going to separate them and get them to sign Terry McLaurin. He's
But the
still on his
difference
rookie
between
deal. I don't get
offering
it.
him 17 million or offering him $21 million a year might be the difference that it takes to get Terry McLaurin to put a pen to paper. That's what I'm getting at.
Move cash around into bonuses. Like this to me is
I don't
just
know if
weird.
I don't know if Washington's a well enough run organization that they know how to do those things.
But
They just
that's
say,
what I'm
"Oh,
saying. Is it's just
let's just
stupid.
add 3.6 million to our concern count." Yeah, I mean like if this were the Saints or the 49ers or they had a GM that knew what he was doing, this probably wouldn't be a story, but this is the Commanders and they do dumb things and they don't know how to manage their money well.
Come on, Manders. Come
They're playing
on.
hardball with Terry McLaurin right now. That tells you everything you need to know about this front office.
Worst off season right now.
Uh-huh.
Commanders or Bengals? Go.
Oh, definitely the Commanders. I mean, the Bengals, they locked down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. What more could you ask for? I mean, that's it might not be a good defense, but they got it figured out on the other side of the ball at least.
Hey, remember when I said that we were going to go really fast in this episode? I lied. That took us a very long time, but we still went through all 32 NFL teams. We talked about way more than 32 players. And this was great to catch up on all of the news. You guys got your quick download of everything that's happened for the last week, how this affects fantasy football. And guess what? We're going to be back again tomorrow and throughout the rest of this week. Okay. We're going to be giving you shows on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We're going to be talking about how to beat the different average draft positions on your various fantasy apps such as ESPN, Yahoo, and Sleeper. We're going to be doing that all throughout the week. So if you have fantasy leagues on any one of those apps, you're going to want to make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. You are paying attention and subscribed on the podcast side as well. Guys, it's going to be a big week, man. Fantasy football drafts are here. The big fantasy draft weekend is almost here as well. I know that's going to be towards the end of this month of August. So make sure you are staying with us. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.